Hey folks, Cool18 here, and welcome to another Unity 3D tutorial on how to make a multiplayer first-person shooter, and today we make bullets go pew pew pew. So we already have shooting in our game, right? If I pop into I'm so good at paint, my graphics are so illustrative. Right now, we've got the point where we've got a guy who's got a gun, and there's a target, and we can point at the target, pull the trigger, and have this target take damage. We know which target we hit. We know actually exactly where we hit. We've got coordinates that we can get for the actual collision point. And when we hit something, we send a message over the network via RPC, Remote Procedural Call. I think that's what it stands for, that says, hey, this guy over here was just hit for a certain amount of damage, 25 points of damage, and this person is responsible for changing their health. They drop their health by 25. Now, everyone on the server gets informed about this, so everyone on the server can, make the person look damaged or hurt or all kinds of little things like that, which we're not doing right now, but you could get to that point. You can also use it for anti-cheat detection, make sure this person's not, faking invulnerability or something weird like that. But yeah, this person's health will go down, and when they get to 0 or lower, then this person then dies. So this is all functional. The problem is, we don't see that this is happening. We have no bullet effects in the game whatsoever. Now, I've discussed in the past why that is. First of all, realistically, you don't see bullets travel from point A to point B. Ignoring tracer rounds, which everyone thinks is how bullets actually work in real life, but they're not. The bullets, you can't see a bullet travel through the air. Secondly, because of the distances involved in our game, it's relatively close quarters, it's actually not realistic to use a full physics solution to work things out. What you could do is you could spawn a bullet object, give it a velocity, give it a rigid body or whatever, and have it travel forward and then check for collisions. The problem is that this bullet should actually be traveling so fast that it'll travel from point A to point B sort of between visual frames. And yeah, you can sort of resolve it and do all kinds of stuff. And no, we're trying to keep things incredibly simple, and physics over this server is, it's hairy. So realistic bullet sort of stuff is, we're not gonna cover that. We will cover projectiles at some point when we make a rocket launcher, right? There'll be a slow moving rocket. And that's going to be an entirely different thing, where it spawns and travels forward and sees if it collides against something, and then it explodes. But it's much more slowly moving. A sniper rifle is so fast that for the size of our server, this instantaneous thing is totally fine. But what we'd like is some sort of indication that shot happened. So we're going to create some sort of effect. Some sort of effect that shows the path of travel. And you could go all kinds of things. I mean, you could make this into a sort of a laser gun, where what you would do is sort of create some sort of cylinder that goes, that sort of covers this and make it glowing red for a red laser beam, and just have it show up for a couple of frames and then disappear. In fact, we may do something very similar to that. You could do Matrix style sort of air rings, that sort of air resistance, turbulence kind of effects that you'd see in the Matrix, that sort of distortion, and just spawn a bunch of these rings along the path and then have them grow over time, just have them get a little bit bigger, so it gives you that, that sort of cone effect towards the target. That might be very convincing. None of these things are particularly hard to do, but the point is that this visual is completely disconnected from our actual combat stuff. We're going to resolve the shot, and we're going to use an RPC call to tell this guy that, hey, you took damage. And then we're going to create another RPC call that tells everyone on the server, hey, play some sort of visual effects here that goes from point A to point B. And that will indicate our gunshot. And it means we can swap our actual graphic effects in and out very easily. And the reason I'm doing it this way is I'm actually going to use an entire object or entire script to manage these visual effects, and we're going to use these effects for all kinds of different things. Oh, the other thing we can do in addition to showing this path is we can also have the sort of the contact, right? A little smoke cloud coming out of where we hit or something like that. That I think is especially going to be good if we happen to hit a wall or the floor. We're going to want just a little sort of, I keep going to say ricochet effect, but that's not true. A little bullet hole on the ground, some sort of decal or decal, and maybe a little bit of smoke or some sparks that come off of where we hit the wall, right? That might be a really good idea. I don't think we're going to cover that in this video, but we may cover that later on. For now, we're just going to focus on the actual sort of beam effect. So anyway, enough explanation. Let's get this going. So let's do a little bit of groundwork. First of all, I already have a scripts object here. We've got a network manager. I'm gonna create a new component, and I'm gonna call it FX manager. Okay, some sort of visual effect manager is going to be responsible for when we're going to have our players or our other scripts just tell the effects manager, hey, do this special effect. And this thing's going to be responsible for doing the visuals, doing the sound, and everything. And it's going to let, I don't know if this is the standard way of doing things, but I kind of like doing this. Well, even in single-player games, but especially in a multiplayer game, I think it's going to be quite handy. And it also emphasizes the idea that the visual effect is a completely separate thing from the gameplay effects, right? So let's pop this open. So this is the effects manager. Mostly this thing is going to be doing what? Well, it's going to have a bunch of like RPC type functions, right? And we're going to do something like sniper bullet FX. And what does it want to know? It's going to want to know where the shot started and where the shot ended to start with. And we may do more than that, but all right. So this is going to be start position, vector 3, end position. So that's what we're going to feed into the effect. We're going to say, hey, we shot from here and the bullet ended there. Make stuff happen. All right, we're going to start relatively simple. And we're going to call that when we shoot. So in our player shooting script over here, we shoot, then we see if we hit a transform, like if we hit something. And, oh, we also know the information about where we hit. Do we have that information? Let's see. Okay, so again, this is the player. The player's got a shooting script. It's got an update. Every frame, it checks to see if you're shooting. If it is, it calls shoot, checks to make sure our cooldown is ready to go. We fire the gun. We project we figure out what ray, like the forward-facing ray, is going on, and then we pass that ray information to find closest hit object. We do a ray cast all, we fire the ray forward. This returns every object that we hit. We loop through each one of those objects and find the thing closest to us that is not us that we hit. That way it stops anything really wonky from happening where we hit our own character model. Okay, so this returns the thing closest to us that we hit. And we return a vector called hit point. Hit.point, we return coordinates. Okay, that's good. So hit point is the actual coordinate that we hit. So I guess one of the questions is what happens if we don't hit anything? What do we want our effect to do? That's okay. Yeah, that's all right. We're going to do something about that as well. We'll figure out what like the maximum visual range of our shoot effect should be, and we'll just tell the FX manager, hey, make a sniper bullet that starts here and ends at this other place in midair, for example. And that's fine. We can do that. Okay. So what we should do, because here we're going to want to call the FX manager, we should grab a copy of this and probably cache it. So we'll have FX manager, and we don't have a start function, so let's go and create one. Void start FX manager equals game object dot find objects of type, object singular. There should only be one. FX manager. And again, this is an example of one of these, this should be capitalized, of one of these functions that won't work with this exact signature if you're running the wrong version of Unity / C++ or C# and all those things. In the older version of Unity, you'd have to use this version where you do a type of and FX manager, right? If you do that. So those are the sort of problems I'm saying. Make sure you've got the right version of Unity. Then you can do this, which just works out so much better because it returns an object of the right type and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so we've got the FX manager. And so we'll actually give one little freak out here if we don't find one. If FX manager is equal to null, debug.log error, couldn't find an FX manager, like that. Then, so when we're shooting here, we're firing. So this is if we are shooting something. So we're going to do an RPC call on the FX manager. Let's figure this out. Let's remember how RPC calls work. Right, so this needs a photon view. So the object that has the FX manager needs to have a photon view, and it does. Good, all right. So first, let's make sure, let's not do anything if we don't have an FX manager. So we're going to make sure that FX manager is not null. And assuming it is, because at that point we've already thrown up an error. Oops, there we are. Let's get those the right way around. So assuming it's not null, we'll do fxmanager.getComponent. And we really should store this as well, like cache it, but that's all right. We'll just muddle on for now. Just because this getComponent call is slightly slow, but we're not doing this every frame, so let's not freak out. We're going to do a remote procedure call, and we are going to, right now we'll do this all hard-coded in, but there might be better ways of doing it later on. We're going to call sniper bullet FX. Because right now our weapon is all hard-coded. Later on, we're going to want multiple weapon types, so we're not going to want to just call this function directly. We're going to want to have some sort of variable that holds information. That's okay. Then we need to know what targets to send that is in. Well, we want to send this to everyone. We don't, because we want everyone on the server to play this visual effect. We don't want it to be buffered though. That for people who join the server later, they don't need to see like 100 gunshots going off simultaneously. So photon targets.all is going to be perfectly fine. And then we send it some parameters. Now we've got our parameters where we need a start position and an end position. All right, we can do that. So our start position, we shoot our gun from our camera. Okay, where our camera is, that's our start position. And then the end position is the hit point, which is right here. Hit point is the end position. Great. So this will work if we've got one. If we don't, so this entire if is if we actually hit something. Else, we didn't hit anything except empty space. But let's do a visual FX anyway. Now I say visual, but this effect will also be responsible for making sound. So we're going to do this bit of code as, again, we're going to make sure the FX manager is not null, get the photon view, do an RPC, but we don't have a hit point clearly. So instead what we're going to do is set hit point to be equal to, our camera's current position plus the camera in the forward direction times 100. Okay? Because I don't think we've got a max range right now. Yeah. See, we might want to put in a range, in which case we'll factor this in. But let's send it 100 meters forward is how far we'll make the beam effect. So that's the hit point here, and we're going to do that. So that's obviously not the actual hit location because we didn't hit anything. But there we go. This will work perfectly fine. Good. So if we run this now, we should not get an error? Question mark? Let's see. Well, we got no syntax errors. That's pretty good. Let's turn off maximize on play. Let's hit start, join the multiplayer, shoot the ground, shoot the air. All right. Now what I should have done is put in a debug.log with the sniper bullet effect so we know that it's being called here. Let's try that again. No errors is one thing, but is anything actually happening? So this is the multiplayer one. Yeah, sniper bullet effects. Sniper bullet effects in the air as well, and I'm going to try again in single player mode. Sniper bullet effects, wonderful. You also notice going into single player mode, originally I used to get some errors here, and that has been resolved, I think, both the new Photon Unity networking. It was whining that, like, when we did some, like, certain RPC calls and whatever, it was just whining about the fact that, oh, there's no actual connection object. It's like, I know, but I'm in offline mode. You shouldn't be sending me an error. You should be checking for that. So apparently that has been fixed, which is good. Okay, so this is now being called when we shoot. So now we got to figure out what the visual should be. All right, in my scripts over here, the FX manager, let's do a couple of things. Let's give it room for an audio clip. This is going to be a public, And this is going to be the Sniper Bullet FX audio. So now we can give it a sound effect. That'll be the first thing. We'll have a pew 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 sound. What's the best way to do this? Let me go and load up a website for you guys. Give me 2 seconds because I gotta find it. Oh, I am so not prepared for these things. Tools, 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 tools. What am I looking for? Aha. The Let 'em Dare website. Let 'em Dare is a great 48-hour game programming competition jam that's tons and tons of fun. But it's got this great page of tools, handy-dandy tools to develop things in. And one of the things I like to mess around with the audio effects is these sound generators. Now, the SFXR is one that you have to download, I believe. BFXR is basically the same thing, but web-based. So we can load this up. And prepare your ears. This has my volume setting over here. These sounds will probably be a little bit loud and annoying, but laser/shoot. Let's hit this. Maybe explosions. Can we make this shorter? Maybe we'll just go with a pew pew. Yeah. All right. Good enough for this. So I'm going to export this. So this randomly generates sounds with like some information here. You can tweak a lot of these parameters to dramatically change the way the sound sounds. You can also hit mutation. If you hit mutation, it's basically going to be the same sound as you have selected with slight changes. So if we're mostly happy with this, we can hit mutation. And they're just slightly different. That almost sounds like the classic silenced weapon sound. Just a pew. Here, we'll use this one actually. I think that's fine. So at this point, I'm going to export the wave. It should, yeah, bring up this. Give me a second to move the window over and bring up our project folder, which is episode 14. Good. I'll bring that up, go into assets. We'll create a folder for sounds, probably. Or maybe under player stuff. Let's put it under player stuff. No. Oh, we'll make a folder for FX. Yeah. That's what we'll do. So we'll have FX stuff. And we'll make a new folder for sounds. There we are. I'll save it in there. Laser shoot 10, save that. Then if we go back into Unity, we will now have a FX stuff sounds laser shoot. There we are. Now, by default, this will come in as a 3D sound, which is fine. If you flip it to 2D sound, then it won't use positional data. So depending on what kind of game you're making, if you want a voiceover or something like that, you want to turn off the 3D sound. So it sounds exactly the same everywhere in your game. But here, we actually do want it on because people who are close to us when we shoot, the sound should be louder, and people who are further away, it should be quieter. You can force it to mono, which actually would... Oh, we don't need to do. Sometimes you'll download a sound that it's in stereo. It'll have two sort of soundtracks, but they're both identical to one another. Some programs will just do that when you save it. It'll save it as a stereo sound, even though both channels are exactly the same. So you could force it to mono just to save a little bit of time. Load type, I won't go through all these settings because they're very covered in the documentation. But yeah, we've got our sound effect. Great, let's use that. So in our scripts over here, so our Sniper Bullet FX, we're going to drop it in there. So let's start off by... Here, our Sniper Bullet effects, we've got a start position, and this is a remote procedure call that's being called on everyone's computer. So every player connected to the server will get this function called with these parameters all set up. So we want to play our audio clip. Now, you could set up audio for all kinds of things. The easiest way to play these one-shot clips is to use audio source.play clip at point. This is a static function. You feed it an audio clip, which in this case is our Sniper Bullet FX audio, and you feed it a position to play the sound at. There's also an option to throw in a volume in there as well. But we'll just play it at normal volume. So we want to play the sound effect at the start position. Now, this is supposed to be our fire sound, but you could also have another audio effect, which is the bullet ricochet sound. FX audio. Yeah. Right? So if we hit the floor, there should be a little bit of a sort of like sound, some sort of sound when we hit an object, so that the people at the other end, so this is the sound we're going to play where the gun is shot. This is the sound we're going to play when we hit something. Now, if we hit a player, instead, there should just be a kind of sound, right? Like the players should be responsible for making damage making sound when they take damage. So think about that. You want a sound that gets played where you shoot from and also where the bullet hits in some way. Now, we're not going to do this right now. We'll just do this original sound sort of thing. In fact, what we might want to do is break up these effects, right? Have one is a sniper bullet effect, and you could have this fire off another function. It doesn't have to be an RPC call at that time if it's being launched from here, because it'll be running everything, but you could do a void ricochet effect, which is responsible for different stuff. There's all kinds of different ways we can organize it. Anyway, let's move forward. So if I did this right now, presumably, if I hit play, go in single player mode and I shoot, we get sound effects, and this should go across the network. Let's find out. Let's do a build and run. Try to compile that. Hopefully everything will work fine. How am I going to tell where the shot comes from? Ah, I know. Okay, so I'm going to hit play. Go into multiplayer. Go here. Shoot. All right, that's fine. Now, what I can do is bring up my audio mixer, which is here. All right. And now I've got my Unity, my actual Unity program, which is this one here. That's its audio. And then I have my multiplayer first-person shooter. This is the actual build I did. If I mute the sound here, this game should no longer make any audible sound. There, I'm clicking. You can't hear anything. Now what I'm going to do inside of Unity, I'm going to connect. Multiplayer should connect to the same place. I should see my other self. Hello, there I am. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab back over, into my standalone client. Now, I'm going to shoot from my client here. Any sound, you won't hear any sound from my actual client here. Any sound you hear will be coming out of the Unity player by itself. Let's see if that works. Hey! And if I go further away, it should get quieter. Go a little over here. Oh. Yeah, very quiet. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I hope the audio is working okay. But it's very, very quiet and then very loud. So, there's all kinds of things you can do to tweak how far away you hear things. Now, normally what you would do, the fall off, that's a factor of audio source. Let's mess around with this for a sec. We're going to discuss it, and then we're going to leave it be. You can set an audio source on an object. Now, normally, this works if you've got a fixed audio clip. Now, you can change this. Okay, let's explain. Right now, I'm using a static function to just generically play a clip, but I don't have to do it that way. If there's an audio source on an object, I can use audio. This is the audio source. You can also do it's equivalent to doing audio source audio equals get component audio source. Okay, that's the equivalent, but it's already built in as audio. And then you can play a sound, including a one-shot sound, where you just feed it a clip. All right, so we could just feed it the sniper bullet effects audio, and that would be great. And what the advantage of doing that is then you get to use all of these settings, reverb zones, fall off, all this kind of stuff, which is very, very, very good. The problem is we don't want an audio source on our scripts object because it's not really the source of anything. In fact, where is this object even located? Well, we have it at coordinate 0, 0, 0, so it's at the middle of the map, but so we don't want the sound effects to come out of the middle of the map. And what if I decide to take the script object and move it, 1,000 units off to the left side of the map just to get it out of the way? Which you can do, and it shouldn't affect gameplay, except now your sounds aren't going to be coming out of the right place. So you don't want an audio source on your FX Manager script. So you can do this, right? And just use this static function of play clip at point, it means you don't get to fine tune all your audio clippy kind of, or your audio sourcey kind of things like your fall off. The alternative is, when we do our visual effects here, we're going to be spawning some sort of visual thing. We're going to go instantiate, my sniper bullet visual effects. It's going to be some object that we're going to spawn, right? And that's going to be that, it's going to do something. This object here could have an audio source. And if we add the audio source back in, you can see by default, play on awake is there. If this object has an audio source that plays on awake and has the right clip assigned to it, then as soon as you spawn this object, it will play the sound. It will make that sound and it will show up in the right position, assuming that your position X, Y, Z is correctly mapped to the source, and it will make that sound effect, and then it means you can tweak all of these pitch settings and all kinds of stuff. I'm going to leave this off for now. I suspect we will ultimately be doing this at some point, but for now it's far simpler to just play a clip at point. That way we can separate out the sound and the visual. Now already I'm going to put a cut in here, and when we come back in the next episode, we will deal with the visual effects. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.